We're back to talk Goldfinger with Mr. Robert Meyer Burnett. I saw it for the first time ever, and I'm going to tell you what I think.
I can't
How's
wait.
everybody doing here? We got Andre, the boss man, with us. How you doing?
Greetings, everyone. We will, of course, be talking some Star Trek later, but right now, let's talk about something that's actually good, namely Goldfinger.
Also with us is Mr. Santa Claus, or
Ho.
Rob.
Ho, 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 stick 'em up.
Moose and Squirrel get no present. And we also have with us the resident script doctor who has the cure for all of your entertainment needs.
Good morning and good
And he has a
afternoon.
beard.
Yeah, it's cold in Canada.
It's just quarantine beard.
And
Yeah.
everyone else here has facial hair, so I thought I'd hop on the bandwagon.
And as I said in the intro, we have the one, the only, Mr. Robert Meyer Burnett.
Oh, I thank you for having me. I love that you're doing this series. It fascinates me that you're watching the Bond movies for the very first time. I love that.
It is an interesting discovery, I guess is the best way to put it to this point.
Don't say that word.
Well,
Please.
in this case, it actually is a good thing because I really did love the last film. I thought this one was, just about as good as the last one. So, I should watch it again. Here's my thing, and I've said this 2-3 times now while we do this. I should set enough time aside to watch them twice and twice before, so I can really kind of soak them in. Because the one before this, From Russia with Love, it really had me from beginning to end. This one, unfortunately, there was bits and pieces where I kind of drifted off, but I don't think it was the movie's fault. I think it was just my life intervening. But no, I felt the film was solid. I could tell that the budget was much higher. It actually looked like a movie filmed in the mid to late 70s more than it did the mid 60s as far as quality wise. I loved that we got some of the gadgets and we had a lot of the, typical lines that we know now so well, like shaken, not stirred, and no, I expect you to die, Mr. Bond. And, the extremely long laser beat. It took forever, and he's trying to bargain with his life and just, pussy galore. And, and I was kind of surprised at how many strong female characters there were in this movie. I wasn't expecting, a whole team of female pilots, and Pussy Galore was a very strong female character. Again, so I thought it was a pretty good movie. I have to watch it again to really get a feel for it. Because I really just didn't get a chance to soak it in like I'd like to. But no, I definitely would give it a solid 8 out of 10 easily. I'm sure I would enjoy it more on second or third viewing.
People always ask me about the Chewbacca scale that I give, which was developed by Jake Bentley, who's probably still in the cabin with Melman. But I always say there's 5 Chewbaccas, and then there's a 6th Chewbacca for movies that are so awesome that 5 cannot contain them. This gets us 6 Chewbaccas. This is just off the chart awesomeness.
And I can tell what you're talking about because some of the action scenes are way advanced from what we've seen so far. I totally get where you guys are coming from on that part for sure.
Well, I also think.
Carry on.
Oh no, go ahead, Andre.
Okay, yeah. I was just want to say that one of the things that always stood out to me with this one is that it's obviously the third Bond movie, but in some ways it's the first one since, as you mentioned, Tom, this is where you have all the tropes. This is also where the intro sequence really comes into its own, and you have the fantastic opening song that even matches the title, which would be a Bond staple. Only a couple of movies later on would deviate from basically have like a different opening song title from the movie title. But this started like that proud tradition, and it only gets better and better from there. Also, this is where you got like the really colorful Bond villains, who in many ways are as important as Bond himself, starting strong here with Oddjob.
I did like Odd Job. Goldfinger to me, and again, this is probably just because we've had a million ripoffs of that character, didn't come off as interesting and cool as Robert Shaw did in the previous film. But again, like I said, I've seen so many of the parodies. I was trying to separate myself from that throughout the movie because every time there was a Bondism that popped in, I'd find myself chuckling or going, I wouldn't say cringing per se, but like just like, yeah, I wouldn't say I knew it was coming, but just when I heard it was just like that familiarity, I guess is the best way to put it.
Well, did you like kind of like the little bookending trope of how Bond defeats the villain in the same capacity, or his adversary in the same capacity?
As far as like,
well, in the opening sequence, if memory serves, because I saw this movie last week, so I'm pretty sure I remember it correctly. I might be blurring them together, but Bond gets into a fight. He throws a guy into a tub, and then he knocks a fan into the tub, electrocuting him.
Right.
And then at the end, Oddjob grabs his hat from the bars, and Bond throws the electrical wire into the thing, electrocuting him. Like it's.
Oh,
it's
okay. I
nice
thought you meant the
bookend.
setting up of the fuselage thing.
Oh,
Okay.
no.
Well, I one of the things I love about this film is, Goldfinger is who he is, but he's shown. I just love the fact that they spend time that he cheats. He's this very wealthy man who he cheats at cards, he cheats at golf. Like he doesn't have to do these things, but it's part of his. I don't think another movie nowadays would take time. I mean, when we first meet Goldfinger, he's literally hustling dudes at a Miami hotel.
Yeah.
He's such a lowlife, and yet they turn him into this formidable figure that talks to the mob and has this plot to destabilize the economy of the Western world. And I just love that they don't have to. They can make him petty and larger than life at the same time. And I've always loved that about this movie, and the fact that you literally have Bond going head to head with a villain on the golf course. And Bond defeats him when he uncovers the fact that he's cheating at golf.
Accidentally to a point. Like he gets him on his own game because he is cheating, but then he's like, I'm just going to cheat the cheater.
Right, exactly, and it's so good.
That's that one line, those couple of lines. If that's his original ball, then I'm Arnold Palmer. It's not. How do you know? I'm standing on it.
Right.
It's just like,
Yeah.
That's great. I love that.
And
Well,
it's also the actor they got to play that caddy. The actors, all the colorful bit players. I mean, that guy was great and added to the whole tapestry of the films. I mean, whenever they have a chance to have a secondary character or a day player come in, they're usually, especially in the Connery Bonds, quite memorable. And they just add to the flavor of the whole film, and it's terrific.
Well, I hate to say this, but looking at it from modern eyes, if this movie came out now, Goldfinger would basically be Orange Man bad. Like every single trope he had could be a
greedy businessman who wants to.
not just that, but the golf aspect.
Yeah. Hey, it was ahead of its time.
All this other stuff, the fact, just everything about him, I could see them twisting it into an Orange Man bad character. And I liked Goldfinger all right, but Oddjob was the one, of course, who stuck out more so. So maybe it was the fact that he overshadowed him a bit. And I think it was kind of the same thing with Robert Shaw in the last movie, like, because he wasn't even the main villain, was he? From my recollection, he was just the henchman or whatever kind of thing, if I wasn't mistaken.
But he had his moments too, like that moment.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Like he was he was more there and he was more present in the film. And to me, he was a more formidable foe. I mean, Oddjob was good in this, but again, I have to see it again. I was looking at, Goldfinger, and I'm just like, all I could see was either Trump or fucking Goldmember. That was my problem with this one.
Fat Bastard definitely takes some inspiration from Goldfinger.
Well, not just Fat Bastard, but the Goldmember bit from the whole film, the whole deal. Instead of him being, German or whatever, he's Dutch.
Yeah.
But I mean, again, and I had to try and separate myself from that. That's the toughest part now. And I can see that maybe an issue going forward is how often am I going to have the problem of just going, oh, I've seen this parodied or ripped off a million times now.
Well, you bring up I think a really good point, and that is our cultural history, now since we're talking about movies, is it still relevant in the postmodern era when all of these things have been sent up and parodied and made fun of wantonly for a long time? Because there was a reason they were first targeted for parody in the first place, because they were popular, because they were successful. But once you've moved into the postmodern phase of something, is it relevant anymore? Because like with you, Tom, that's why I'm so interested to hear your opinions, because having not watched these movies, I mean, I grew up with them and it was a staple of, my life. It was when a Bond movie was on TV, it was an event for the whole family. And indeed, every kid watched the Bond movies, and you go to school the next day and talk about them. And now hearing it, it's always interesting to hear your opinion, because you don't have that attachment to these movies, and you can see them from a more of a clinical, objective perspective, where I never could. Like I don't have an objective opinion about Goldfinger anymore. I mean, it's something I've loved since my childhood, so I see no fault in it at all. I guess that wasn't a question.
No. I mean, I guess
it's a very good point, though, because
exactly,
because everything that you see with the tint of nostalgia in it is very difficult to measure. Well, how would audiences today, if they were presented to this for the first time? And as we can see, like Tom, he is clearly not overwhelmed, and it's just happenstance and coincidence that he didn't grow up with them, because he's the same age as anyone else that did grow up with them. But what about people who are right now in their teens or early 20s and who are in the same position, and that's come from a completely different world, basically? What would someone like James Bond mean to them, or if they saw these movies here for the first time? Like, Tom, I know that you can appreciate good vintage movies. You can appreciate movies from the 60s and older. But what about like young, stupid kids, to be blunt about it, that can't do that?
No, I don't think any young
anything that's older than themselves. Because I've heard some people genuinely say, "No, I don't see old movies that's older than me because I don't understand them."
No, I don't think any younger kids would really, unless they're a kid like who would appreciate classic film. No, there's just no way. And especially this one. This one here sticks out to me as the one that if they saw this, especially after if they saw like Goldmember and shit like that, they would totally think it's cheesy and dumb. But I also see, from my point of view, like you just said, Andre, I see this film in its place where it was in film history, what it accomplished, and the type of editing it has, the type of technical aspects it has. I mean, especially those action sequences, they're cut almost like modern day action films, which I'm sure at that time was way ahead of its time. Because I mean, this one came out even before Bullet, didn't it?
Yes.
Yeah. So like, yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, so this one was way ahead of the curve. I will give it that on the technical curve. But personally, without watching it again, I like the story from Russia with Love a little bit better. But that's just a personal opinion.
No, but what you were saying, Andre, I had a very good friend of mine, brought up he had two sons. And when they were young, he started showing them classic films like the Marx Brothers, Three Stooges, and he was showing them Bond films. And his oldest son, Liam, when his son was, I want to say 10, was a Bond fan. And we took him to a theater here in Hollywood, the ArcLight, to see Goldfinger for the first time on the big screen. And we were in a huge theater, the Dome, the Cinerama Dome, and the kid loved it because he'd been brought up by his parents. His dad especially was showing him these films when they were very young, so he had yet to, in his mind, he had never seen a Bond film in a theater, and Goldfinger was the first one that he had seen in the theater, and he'd never seen Goldfinger before. And when he was jumping up in his seat the whole time, he was so excited. And he said when we were walking out of because I guess he hadn't seen From Russia, I guess he hadn't seen the first two, but he was so enamored of the fact that James Bond wore a hat in the opening gun barrel sequence. It's like, James Bond wore a hat, and he just thought that was so great. And nowadays, I think you're absolutely right. It depends when you see these films, and if you've already seen Goldmember and you've already seen these are movies, these are over 50 years old, so the entire filmmaking and pacing is so different, and the evolution, especially after when the advent of MTV, film editing changed so drastically to keep up with the fast pace of music video editing, that really I think it's very hard for audiences to go back and accept these movies at all. even if they're astute and they think to themselves, okay, I'm going to put myself in the mindset of the 60s and I'm going to try and, but if you've grown up with Bourne and you've grown up with the modern Bond films, it is hard to go back and watch these films. And because they are so different, they're almost like Victorian era compared to a modern action movie, like especially the Bourne Supremacy. If you watch that and watch this, it's like they're in different universes.
To be honest, I'd rather watch this. I'm not a big Bourne fan, so like, no, I totally appreciate these films for what they are. I mean, we got a couple super chats here. Patrick Mulligan says Dr. No was a good spy film until the third act, where it becomes a Bond film. From Russia with Love is a Bond film with
License to Kill.
License to Kill being my personal favorite. Love R&B. Yeah, License to Kill is one that I think a lot of people are going to be fighting to get that review, because I think I already have had at least 2 or 3 of our friends try and call that one, including Critical Drinker, I think is one of them, if I'm not mistaken. So that one will be a fun one. But no, I totally get what you're saying. And yeah, I guess if I had to say, I think if what you're saying is what I'm getting from that is like From Russia with Love is probably the most purest Bond film. Like I get that. Like now we've established this in Goldfinger. It feels like a third film, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. Like, I mean, we've got these characters established. I like the dichotomy, and it's not hard to follow, I mean, it's pretty well done. Ed Starr says with $10, thank you so much. Odd Job is to Goldfinger as the flying monkeys are to the Wicked Witch of the West. Yeah, I kind of gathered that. That's a pretty good analogy there. And then I see here Jack Beers wanted to know Fractal Jack wants to know my favorite moments. My favorite moments. The one chase scene was really well done. I like the intro. I like the golf scene. The laser beam scene got a little cheesy and over, like long.
What?
It got a little long in the tooth. Like I was even kind of like with Goldfinger at that point. It's like, dude, why even listen to him?
2 words you could have overheard randomly.
Yeah, like until like that bit, it just got kind of like.
But he played into his gambling habit.
Yeah, I guess you're right.
Yeah, I mean, that's an important. Some people, I think modern audiences might be like, come on, why would he buy into that? And it's because of that. I mean, Bond knows he can't resist, and not only he can't resist gambling, and that's why I love that. He knows that, and he plays that card literally.
Are you willing
but
to
it's something that modern audiences wouldn't pick up because they just see, oh, he cheats at cards. Oh, he cheats at golf. They're not picking up the pattern of what's actually happening there.
Are you willing to take that chance? No. We've seen from the way he plays cards, the way he plays golf, he isn't willing to take chances on losing. Ever.
No,
and I get that.
Especially when money's involved at this level.
I think it was just the fact that it was just taking so damn long, and it's just
but
like
also this is like where that trope comes from, with
right.
the villain explaining the plot in detail, allowing the hero the time to escape. Because like by now, of course, it's like a cliche that's gone on for so long that people have even forgotten. I think because we haven't seen it done in the last 2 decades. But again, this is
made fun of all the time.
Because this is, sorry, what was that?
So I don't know about that. It gets made fun of all the time, and that's kind of where
it still gets made fun of, because that's like the problem for like many original properties, because they are iconic, but because they're iconic, everyone else references them. And I can mention a couple of examples of this. Like, for instance, if we just go into other fiction, say, for instance, John Carter. They couldn't do John Carter because it's been strip-mined by everything else. And when they did do it, for one thing, they had a completely wrong director. But then, by the time all was said and done, the end result looked like a rip-off of other vastly superior movies that had strip-mined the original stories way before. And that's why they're struggling getting an Elric series off the ground now as well, because The Witcher ripped off too much of it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and this is the first movie that really solidifies the Bond girl's place in history. Really, I mean, as gorgeous as Daniela Bianchi
He had
was,
more women in
Ursula,
this one than all of the other ones.
yeah,
I think.
and Ursula
Yeah.
Andress as you know, as breathtaking as she was in that white bikini. You know, Honor Blackman really cements her place among the, you know, the higher the echelon of the Bond girl.
Well, and I also
I have
like,
one question about that, actually, especially to you, Robert, and to you, Rob, since both of you come from earlier generations and you're from the English-speaking world. Because, like, for instance, in my case, like Pussy Galore, when I first saw the movie, when I was how old was I? Could I have been? I don't know, 11, 12, something like that. But anyway, like the name Pussy Galore, it meant nothing to me. Nothing at all. I hadn't gotten that far in my English training just
I
yet.
think that's one of those words that means more the farther west you go.
Yeah,
It was also a common nickname in the 50s and 60s,
So,
and not for what we thought it was.
Well, no,
Yeah,
as
that's
we all
kind of one of the things that I was like thinking about, because it was like only the first time that when like the name rang a bell was actually when I did my master's in the UK, and that was like the first time that I went to conventions and stuff, and there you had like cast members from all sorts of things, which was pretty cool. But you also had like the cast from earlier Bond movies, like Honor Blackman, who was Pussy Galore. And then I was like, wait a second, the hell was this? and that's the first time that it clicked for me. But I have to ask, like, at the time when the movie came out, what did the name mean? And how was the response to it?
Well, you know, in the original novel, the character of Pussy Galore explains to Bond that she became a lesbian when she was after she was 12 because she was being abused by her uncle, and so that was definitely a part of the novel, and they downplayed that. I mean, it's as much there as it could possibly be in a movie.
yeah, this was pretty progressive. Like the last
yeah.
film, I noticed. Yeah,
Yeah, and I just think, look. When I was really young, I didn't understand it either. You know, when I first saw Goldfinger, but as I got older, I even now, my puerile sense of humor, I can't not chuckle.
Yeah.
You know, when she says her name, and I'm like, of course you are. And so is your troop of flying friends over there. I mean, it's you can't, and I think, you know, it's very. There was something again very sort of that whole Playboy After Dark idea behind Bond. I mean, you can't take that out. That's been completely bled out of the franchise now, but back then it was definitely there. You know, in Diamonds Are Forever, when Bond meets Plenty O'Toole, and
yeah. I mean,
named after your father, perhaps. I mean, it's
Pussy
just
Galore is almost like you're not even trying to hide it, though. Like,
right.
All right, off
Well,
the
like
bat,
the
it
nickname
seems-
Pussy came from a woman named Catherine, because I used to work at an old folks' home as one of my first jobs, and there was a lot of women there named Catherine, but they all went by the nickname Pussy, and it was, for me, to be a teenager at the time, it was quite hysterical to
You see,
hear
that's
these
exactly
lesbians.
what I'm talking about. That's exactly what I was asking. Like, is there another meaning that would?
Oh
like,
yeah,
make it
yeah. I
better?
mean, it means a lot of different things, but as far as like the meaning that they're tongue in cheek trying to play with in Bond, obviously, and what it means more so over here in the U.S. is what I was getting at, which probably wasn't a common thing probably till the 70s, I'd imagine.
No.
Well, and also today, there was a letter auctioned. According to this article in The Guardian, there was a letter auction where Ian Fleming wrote that Pussy Galore, quote, only needed the right man to come along to cure her of her psychopathological malady.
Oh, so she just needs some deep
Ouch.
nicking,
Oh, man.
I'm surprised
like,
Ian Fleming
Mamie.
hasn't been canceled for that one.
Yeah.
You know, but you know, she does admit in the novel, at least the way Fleming wrote her, that she became a lesbian. It was a choice. She wasn't born that way.
But I
So-
love the whole cat and mouse game they play though with each other.
It's great.
It is a great. I mean, there's an obvious flirtation there.
Well,
She's,
that's probably partially where the name came from,
Yeah.
because of course.
I gotta show Robert this. This isn't necessarily a Bond collectible, but see that? Know what that? Recognize that?
It's an old style razor.
The same style Gillette Slim he uses on the plane.
Wow, that doesn't still work. Can you still open up?
It still works. The door's open. The mechanism here still works.
Wow.
I found that when I was in Colorado at a flea market, indoor flea market. I said, "Oh, gotta have it.
That's
gotta have it."
fantastic.
Yeah, and that's why I bought it. I want the true Bond shave.
Yeah. Can you get blades for that?
Oh yeah, you can get blades.
He likes a close shave.
You get blades all over. Go on eBay. I mean, you get blades. I use a blade from Russia called Voskod.
So how much did Gillette pay for that one?
I don't know, but Gillette probably paid quite a bit for the product placement at the time.
Yeah.
So, but just don't try to, if you want the Bond aftershave Florist 95, that'll set you back about $150. So,
I'm good.
Yeah. But as I researched, but I saw that I researched it. I said, what the heck kind of razor is that? And I found, the Gillette Slim. Yes. Okay. Got to get it. So.
No, but they do have that good flirtation. The scene in the barn when they're like mock fighting in the hay. I mean, I thought that was totally sexy when I was a little kid, and she has that like wraparound top. What I did like about her was, unlike, I mean, she was a beautiful woman, but she was beautiful in a powerful sort of a way. You know, when Honey Rider when Ursula Andress comes out of the water, it's so disarming. I mean, she's in that bikini, she's got a knife on her hip. It's like hubba hubba. But with Honor Blackman, you like her. She's sexy because she's powerful.
Yes,
she's both beautiful, but she's also like, I love the fact that she could kick your ass.
There's an allure in strength.
Yes,
there really is. And I said that, the whole thing about, and I talked to this about the Literature Devil. If you go back in history and mythology, the most powerful female warriors were also the most beautiful.
Yeah.
I mean, there is an allure and there is a sexiness to strength, and she shows that. She really does.
No, absolutely. And I think, for all of the talk about how the Bond franchise is now relegated to what M says in GoldenEye, he's a sexist, misogynist dinosaur, a product of the Cold War, as if that's a bad thing. I mean, it's back in the day, he was who he had to be. And for audiences of the time, the fact that Honor Blackman, I know her name elicited chuckles, but she is a strong character. Look, the fact that she succumbs to Bond eventually, it's because he's the hero of the movie. It's not like, this is not something unexpected that goes against her character necessarily. I mean, he's the hero. They've been through an ordeal. And so, unlike what Ian Fleming said, I wouldn't say that necessarily, because maybe that's a little too extreme, but I do like the relationship and I like the character of Pussy Galore quite a bit.
Yeah, she stood out, and not in like a bad way in any way, shape, or form. I mean, yeah, she was a very progressive character for the most part. And I mean, I did like, the whole like him killing with the covering him in gold thing. That was kind of neat.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously iconic. I mean, again, yeah, there's so many iconic things in the film. I totally understand why everybody digs it. I want to watch it again though, so maybe I can catch whatever it was that I missed this time out. I don't know, but it just didn't seem to capture me like the last one did.
Well, it's funny that you say that, because the last one really is a great spy thriller, and even though it's got some fantastical elements, this movie starts to move away from the realism of From Russia with Love, and you get into that more larger than life business with Odd Job, the plot of going into Fort Knox, the gold paint killing Masterson, Tilly Masterson. Is it Tilly Masterson who gets killed? And there is a lot more of that in this movie. It's a lot less grounded, and the spy plot, or the plot of the film, doesn't have the international intrigue. You're not dealing with Smersh and Spectre. It's sort of an offshoot. I guess Goldfinger's an agent of Spectre, I guess. I don't know.
I think he's like the financier or something of that nature.
Yeah, he's like yes, and of course, I love the fact in the movie he's got a Korean manservant henchman, and then he's employing all the Chinese. So it's like this post-Korean War. No, you've got North Korea represented. I would assume Odd Job's North Korean, and then the communist Chinese are helping him, which I think is great to destabilize the Western economies. Which I think is
well. I also love the fact that a lot of people, especially writers, get this fact wrong. Is that when Bond is getting on the table with the laser, Goldfinger has not given away the plot of the film. That comes much later when they're actually having a drink of iced tea, where Bond figures it out because Goldfinger does not tell him. And that's kind of like an interesting fact, because I've read a lot of scripts that are spy thrillers. They're trying to be Bond. It's like the guy's about to die, and so the bad guy says, "Oh, I'm going to tell you the plan." It's like, that's not what happened in Goldfinger, man.
No, and I think the best subversion of that trope is in Watchmen, the comic version, when Ozymandias in Karnak, he's being confronted by Rorschach and Night Owl. And he says, I remember reading this when I was reading Watchmen when it came out. It's the very end of issue 11, which is the penultimate issue. And Ozymandias says, "I'm not some Republic serial villain, Dan. Do you think that I would explain my masterstroke to you if there was any hope that you could stop it from happening?" I'm paraphrasing. And then he says, like, "I did it 38 minutes ago." And then you see the characters, they're both looking at each other. It's like the same panel repeated. And then it just goes to a whiteout. And the last page of the comic is you see the last bits of their faces as they're being obscured by the snow, as they realize that New York has already been nuked by the giant squid. And that was the ultimate subversion of the villain explaining their plot. And they did it in the movie too, but I didn't think it was as good.
Well, I like the fact that it just shows that the heroes were kind of out of sync on their timing for when they had to stop this. And it's a perfectly logical and understandable possibility. Like, it's not contrived. It's like, yeah, what are the odds that they'd be late? Pretty good.
Right. I just such a great, because I do think about that a lot. You know, that trope when people say that, like you said, Script Doctor, the idea that this villain thing came out of Goldfinger, people do forget. You know, that Mandela effect that he didn't explain the plot when the laser's on. And that's an important thing.
Yeah, I mean, had he actually explained the plot, Bond wouldn't have anything to say that he could communicate to 008 for. Bond's arguing like, I already know your plan.
Yeah.
And I've told 008, and he'll come after you if I don't report in. And are you willing to bet that chance? And that's what gets him to escape. And if you misremember it, that he tells him the plot, you completely defeat the entire purpose of that scene.
Yeah. Yep.
That's kind of like the whole braces thing when we get to the one with Jaws. Ed Star sends in another $10. Thank you so much. The best villain, show restraint. Yeah, that's true. Look at like Hans Gruber, so on. Robert Shaw in the last film is a good example of that. If you don't already kind of know that he's the villain, you kind of spend the first part of the movie going, well, what is this guy's deal? You know, kind of thing. Is he there to help or is he there to hurt? You know? Yeah, I think that's a good point.
And one of the things that about this movie that I don't like is that I don't like Bond movies that come back to America. and this movie does. And even when I was a kid, I'm like, oh, I live in America. I don't like that.
You know, that was to kind of appeal to the American audience because this was the biggest Bond film at the time as far as like budget wise and all that stuff.
I think that was part of it. I mean, I think that, but again, you were dealing with the book series too, and I don't think they were because these were, you know, these movies were released in the UK first, so I don't know. That's a good question, but it just for me as a kid growing up, I always felt like Bond's in like Kentucky. It's like,
hey man,
he goes to Vegas.
I bet a lot of people who watched Bond in Italy or in Venice and various parts of Europe probably felt the same way because I grew up in Canada and I can't remember Bond going to Canada at any point in time.
No, I don't think he does go to Canada. That's a good question. And what a slight on your Commonwealth country that is.
Would be cool.
Unfortunate, because Ian Fleming lived in Canada to set up the spy agency of CIA.
Right.
Would be kind of cool to see him like trotting around like the Northwest Territory, looking for something. Yeah.
That's just Fleming's way of saying not a damn thing interesting happens in Canada.
But
it's a safe haven. It's the only country that's not attacked in an alien invasion, so we're good.
But if it means anything, though, those scenes at Fort Knox were actually shot in Essex, I believe. Essex. I mean, that's something, I guess.
Well, that set, they couldn't. No one was going to let them into Fort Knox, so the inside of Fort Knox doesn't look anything like that. But what a great extrapolation! I think Ken Adam designed that set. It's such a great, what a great set that is. My God.
I even love the plot, like irradiating gold so it can't be handled or used for like 50 years, which I think would make it this year. It'd be finally safe if Goldfinger pulled off his plot.
Right.
I love what that guy says. Don't be a hero. Or he says, what does he say? Don't like. He says, don't when Odd Job throws him over the railing. Don't be a hero, or whatever it is. I mean, I guess at that point, it's every man for himself. Right.
It is a very interesting, plot for the bad guy, because it's not quite like, I'm going to destroy the world. He's not necessarily out to kill anybody per se, but all he's doing, it's kind of like Lex Luthor and Superman. It's not even that bad, really, because Lex is willing and ready to kill millions of people just to make land worth something. I mean, to be honest, this is kind of like the most tamest thing I've ever seen a bad guy want to do.
Oh, you just wait till we get a little bit further in the movies.
I'm sure they're going to get much more elaborate. That was where I was kind of like, wow, this is kind of tame.
Well, you think it's tame, but think of it this way. If say 9% of the world's gold becomes unusable and invaluable, the people that have the 10% of it become superpowers.
Oh, I get it. I get what he's up to. That's my point. Yeah. But like I was just saying, he wasn't necessarily out to kill millions of people. Per se, like I just brought up the whole thing with Superman, that's the whole thing. He's about to blow up half the West Coast just to make his desert land worth a buttload of money, kill millions of people in the process. I mean, Goldfinger, he's just trying to make his money worth more. Or his gold worth more. He's not out to really kill anybody per se.
Mm. Yeah, he's I mean, the a dirty bomb would be pretty well contained within a vault like that. I mean,
that's what I'm saying. Yeah.
And if there is some fallout and some people in the nearby get cancer and stuff, that's probably a price that Goldfinger's very
half a dozen people or a dozen people as opposed to millions. I think that's a big difference.
Yep.
By the way, I just want to point out that Natasha Cloutier in the chat points out that the beginning of Spy Who Loved Me, the opening ski jump was shot on Baffin Island. So Bond did get to Canada. It's just
I was going to say, I'm sure at some point with all the
not canonical in the story,
with all the snowy stuff in the movies, I'm sure he filmed there. But whether or not he actually quote unquote went there, that I guess would be a good question.
Oh no, Canada's been used a few times for Bond films.
I would imagine
never been a part of the story.
Yeah, you guys all it's like Vancouver standing in for my hometown of Seattle.
Right.
Yeah,
I always love it. Oh, it takes place in Seattle. Oh,
Vancouver stands in for everything.
It's just because of the rain, really.
Jason
the mountains around Vancouver.
Takes Vancouver, for fuck's sake.
Yeah.
It's so fun when they have Bucuresti standing for New York and stuff.
Oh god, downtown Toronto, New York, 30% of the year.
Yeah.
Action.com sent us a couple of super chats here. Says, I love the laser scene because it was the first time I saw someone bluff a baddie in movies. Goldfinger suspected he was bluff, but decided not to risk. Maybe, or didn't Bond really kind of know a little bit about that whole thing? Was kind of the truth.
He had one name, and he basically played a gamble.
Yeah, I guess you're right.
The insecurity
Operation Grand Slam, for instance.
Two words you could have known, overheard.
Ultimately, Goldfinger made the right move, sparing Bond's life because it kept the authorities back. I guess you could look at it, but in the end, he died. So Goldfinger did anyway.
I just loved how he had that general uniform, just ready to go, so he can carry out.
So yeah, I mean,
why does this general have a gold-plated gun? That's kind of weird, don't you think? That's the soldiers.
I know we're gonna start wrapping this up here because we're actually gonna go and review our Star Trek Discovery recovery crap. But any final thoughts on Goldfinger before we do wrap this up? Personally, I thought it was a really good film. I'd like to watch it again so I can kind of get a better feel of it. Maybe I'll watch it again before the next week's movie, and I'll give you kind of a re-review ahead of time, because I didn't videotape myself watching it either. I apologize. So, but yeah. So other than that, anybody else got any final thoughts on it, Robert?
Well, no, I mean, I think this movie is very iconic. You know, it introduced not just Bond gadgets, but maybe the greatest Bond gadget, which is the DB5. You know, which is a car full of gadgets. And I just love this film. Also, the idea that you had the idea of a megalomaniac, one guy who had delusions of grandeur that was willing to create massive havoc to destabilize the planet, which I liked. I mean, Spectre was always trying to like bribe the nations of the world or something, but Goldfinger just didn't care if he wrecked the economy and destroyed the livelihoods of everybody in the West. And then later on in the series, you see people like Hugo Drax and Carl Stromberg that are like, no, I pretty much just want to destroy the world because humanity sucks, and I'm going to start over with my perfect people, my genetically superior chosen race to repopulate the planet. And I like that about the Bond films. I like people who think big.
Yeah, you got to have ambition.
Yeah.
Oh, I like the eccentricity that comes with the Bond films. And Goldfinger, this is kind of like the gold standard of the formula for a Bond film. This is where they figured it out.
Pun intended?
Yes, pun definitely intended. Because, I mean, they were still trying to figure out the adaptation process and budgetary restraints for these films while they were in production. And once Goldfinger hit and people loved it, they realized, yep, I think we nailed the formula here. And it just was minor tweaks as the movies progressed, but you kind of see the pattern and the beat structure, and they throw in all the entertainment value with the newer characters and the new interactions. It was great.
Mills also sent in a super chat here. Please compare Thunderball to Never Say Never Again next time. Also, Bond is public domain in Canada. Well, I don't think Never Say Never is in the set of films I bought, because that's a separate deal, isn't it?
Yeah, it's not official, but the story behind it's really interesting. If you guys can find it, a very interesting book is called The Battle for Bond, about what happened with Kevin McClory. Thunderball was going to be the first James Bond movie, and what happened with the whole that whole battle. Kevin McClory fought against Albert Broccoli most of his life, which is kind of really sad and depressing. It was that guy couldn't get over himself. And
I will see what I can do to try and watch both of them, though. So thank you for the super chat, Mills. We appreciate it. Script, did you have anything else to add to what you just said as far as the final thoughts on Goldfinger?
No, it's a great film. Like many of you here, aside from you, Tom, I grew up watching Bond movies as a kid. My parents, much like Robert, your friend there, did with his son, my parents raised me on the classics before I started seeing a lot of the more modern day stuff. Granted, I was born in the 80s, so I wasn't really tainted as much with the current content of today. But at that time, there was still a broader quality of films that were accessible, and that's kind of what I grew up with. Both my parents were huge Bond fans, and I ended up getting that passed down to myself.
It's true.
All right. ActionCom sends in another super chat. Thank you so much. Goldfinger and Mr. Smith Goes to Washington have the same plot. The hero fails mostly, but succeeds in turning a character against the antagonist. Okay. I'm not sure I see that.
I guess with Pussy Galore helping out Bond at the end.
Kinda, I guess. I mean, I've seen both films. I mean,
that's a very elaborate misdirect on the Army's part. It's like, okay, when these planes fly over, pretend like you're dead.
Yeah.
I
stay that way until something comes over the radio to tell you to get into action.
Rob, any final words on Goldfinger?
I just think it's an iconic movie. Oh, you mean the other Rob?
Yeah, that's fine though. Yeah.
Well, either way, I mean, it's yes, iconic. I mean, as you said, it's an iconic movie. I mean, It's as close to perfect for a Bond movie as you can get. And I always say, if you're going to watch one, this is the one to watch.
All right, Andre.
Yeah, I would say that this is kind of like where Bond becomes Bond, and I don't think that this is the best of the movies in any way. It's not the best Connery movie. It's not of the earlier movies, but it's special in that it's the first real Bond movie where all the tropes are, and it only gets better from here. Mostly. Yeah.
All right. Well, I can't wait till next week, and we look forward to joining Robert again to talk all about Bond. And who knows, we may have another special guest show up for Thunderball. We'll see. Until then, join us over on our Star Trek Discovery review. We hope Robert's going to join us as well. We're going to hop over to that here in about 5 minutes or so. I just threw the link up in the chat there, so just park on up, and we'll be over there soon. Until then, take care, everybody, and have